I've been avoiding making this video for the longest because it's about Hermes. It makes me nervous having to assert some sort of knowledge about this brand. Clearly, it means a lot to me, so as long as I'm prefacing this video by telling you that I will never be able to fully encapsulate everything in the most well-delivered like stream of thought, then you're not judging me based on me thinking that everything I'm saying is like completely right. So when I was building my wardrobe from scratch and I had to like take away a lot of the freedoms that I used to give myself when I was younger, the products of Hermes that I ended up purchasing came from a place of needing stability and comfort in a time where I didn't feel necessarily like I was prepared for a life lesser than what I grew up with. I am missing the camaraderie from like people my age that kind of grew up the same as me, that are also like, no, we have very much of problems in these worlds when like the rent that we want for our lives in order to move out of our homes is this much, and we're just sitting on our asses like having to be 20 somethings that like need to figure out what the fuck, how are we gonna, and we just can't do it. The biggest embarrassment in my life would truly be being one of those people in my like family's like income bracket where we cannot stand to have as much as we were provided. Not having it would signal to me that if you decide to like fall into like a category of person that you don't want to be, you're gonna have to remember that your fall is much further than anybody else's. So you must have done something really wrong in order for you to have to get used to living a lifestyle that you would honestly cry about embodying. The earliest presence of Hermes in my life was through my aunt Tinette. Me and my family decided to migrate to California, to San Francisco. My mother had her older sister there who was living in a home there, and she's been there since like the 80s or 90s. And her older brother, which is like between the ages of that sister and my mom, somewhere in between, he was also living there with his family. The reason being for us moving there was so that my mom could be closer to her siblings. And Tinette was the first presence of Hermes in my life. So she had the Hermes handbags as my uncle's wife. So my parents dropped me off at my uncle's place, and him and his wife, Tinette, end up driving me and her family to the outlets. So we went to Gilroy, and mind you, I was like about like 12 years old, right? So I get to like the van store. I like pick out a pair of Vans that I really liked, and they were black and blue. I don't have a wallet, I don't have cash, I'm just a kid. Her, as the adult, was like looking at me, and so she was the type of woman that was like, oh, Keefe, so like what do you think about those shoes that you're looking at? And I'm just thinking like, oh, yeah, I mean, they're nice shoes, huh? She's just like, okay, yeah, so they're nice shoes, right? And I'm just like, yeah, I mean, like, yeah, I mean, I like the color, they're really nice shoes. So then she just goes like, oh, so do you want me to buy them for you? Really? You can do that? So she's just like, so you're asking me to pay for like your shoes, right? And so those shoes are like $50, right? So you're asking me to pay for like shoes for you that are like $50. And I'm just thinking like, I mean, is that, yeah? Yeah, so you're asking me to pay for like $50 for you, right? It doesn't even matter what type of handbag she had. What I'm saying is like she was the type of like aunt that would say like, okay, well, I am going to, and then she pays for them. In a maternal way, I felt like she was in a financial space to fulfill his dreams and didn't necessarily know how much impact it would make for me because it ended up being such a good choice. So Keith, what is the ideal Hermes bag collection for you? I would say the ideal Hermes bag collection for me would definitely have to include a Birkin 25 centimeter, a Kelly 32 to 35 centimeter, and realistically, by the time I was 35 to 40, I would have wanted to acquire an exotic handbag of some sort myself. So when I moved back to Hong Kong, there was a Hermes Leather Forever exhibition that was held probably the year that I got there. So I had two friends from my high school that I was able to talk about Hermes things with, and their names were Kathy and Justin. So what I'm saying is like we talked about Hermes as friends, and we were honestly really, really close. And I'm saying we're close as in like there's no fronting, there's no bragging, especially when you're this like into one another. So he would tell me about like, oh my god, so my mom has this and my mom has that. Like he would send me photos of his closet and everything. So like me and Justin went to Kathy's house. She had a Hermes Berline bag like just placed on her couch. As in she knows that like we're down for her. So I'm saying like it wasn't about like trying to like show off or anything, but she did probably end up placing that Hermes handbag on the sofa to just be like, welcome to our home. This is the welcome mat. Like this is like, you know, like it's us. We're us. We're in fashion. This is cool, right? And I'm just thinking like, wow, this is the way that I want to be greeted by somebody in my life that I love so much. So yeah, did I mention it was an Hermes Berline handbag? My first boss in life, Dana, while I would see her in the office, she would often carry her own Birkin 25 centimeter in like a navy leather with palladium hardware. So that was the first time that I had seen like an actual Birkin 25 centimeter in real life. Then I can talk about like my friend Race, who's like super, super close to me. And then our worth and our work journey ends up becoming like super, super important to me. We both started on the same day in that year. She was 23 at the time and I was 16. And she went to a boarding school, Kambala, in Australia, and did her master's at, are you a good friend? University of New South Wales in like business administration. Pretend it's business administration. She's a master's program graduate and I'm a 16-year-old. Did I mention she went to a boarding school called Kambala? That is the same boarding school that Margaret Zhang went to for her life. First trimester at my school, I get this internship at Lane Crawford for a week. I'm wearing my Brian Lichtenberg hoodie that says homies on it and it's black with gold. And I show up and I see Race right over there at a good 5 foot tall with the same Brian Lichtenberg crew neck. This is literally both our first days of school. I was literally in the lift to go home on my last day. So everyone already said bye to me and everything. And she just like ends up self-erupting and she does this thing. She did it. I swear to God she did this, Keefe. No, this is not gonna happen for you. So then she tells me to like wait. She goes back to my boss and like basically explains to her, she's like, look, this person that like, you know, has been here for a week, he was just so scared to tell you like if you would ever offer him something that was a little bit more long term. So they did, and I ended up being there 4 months later on like a 6-month retainer. She saw something that she liked about me that she needed more than a week to figure out. She shows up to like the kind of important things of my childhood. I had like this fashion show at my high school where I did like a little collection of things, and she showed up and she brought like an orange Hermes Birkin 35 centimeter as like a congratulations for me. But the more thoughtful thing, aside from she bought me cotton flowers. Isn't that so sweet? In our downtime outside of school, when we were going to eat at like, you know, when we go to dine as ourselves outside of work, she would show me like that she had like an Hermes Berenia leather. Is that the one that patinas over time? So the one that's like a natural raw hide that like when you like put your fingerprints on it, it starts to darken over time with usage and wear. She had a Berenia leather Kelly Retourné in probably like a 28 centimeter. If she was gonna like slut out in like 2 choices of handbags, she had one to do for the scholastic of it, and then she had one to do for this is our time type thing. Things of our friendship that relate to this brand. The summer that I graduated high school, my Aunt Rose, who is my mother's eldest brother's wife, visited Hong Kong as like a recreational trip. She took me to Mott 32 for the first time that I'd ever had, and it was the first time that I had seen like the hotel rooms at the Four Seasons. That was the first time that I'd seen her in a really long time, so I did like grow up in her house through childhood. The first time I see her after 8 years, she brings like 2 Hermes like handbags with her. So I'm like, obviously one was gonna be an Hermes Kelly bag, and the other one was either one of the shapes that are like a handbag to say that she brought. So when she got to Hong Kong, I feel like the purpose for her trip was that she saw like my social media presence either through the cousins or from herself. I just think my feed looked like really good, like as in like my feed looked like I was doing a lot of things. So I get that the first inclination for an adult when you see like a child's feed and it's like just a bunch of handbags and like functions and events and like, and you know, great things that I was able to do for myself, plus with the help of like friends. Probably told my uncle like, oh my god, we should go see like what like your little sister's doing. Like she seems to be doing really well. Look at like Keefe's life, like all this stuff. So she gets here and she talks to me. Mind you, at Mod 32, she only invited me and not my parents in the end, eventually. She had to have an understanding through me when we explained it to each other that like, no, like my parents are doing exactly the same as what you probably expected them to be doing. These things that I have were just like, I was a good like candy flipper with like my handbag. So if you see something that's on my feed that like I don't have anymore, it's because I couldn't afford to retain all of it and I just needed to know everything that I had. On top of it, yeah, I was working at a place for a little bit of my life. And yeah, that thing was like for my friend that like, you know, I met through work and like we just like spend money together with the food. That's not mine. And then yeah, no, like I was a date or a plus one to like this like Calvin Klein event, like because like my like honestly like best friend like in school there was like somebody that took me, so it's not my thing. All the myths of like everything were debunked for her during that trip, so in the end she left with an understanding that it was totally me trying to like carve my own path. Then she goes back to Manila to reconcile with herself. I end up going to New York for FIT. So between her visiting us in Hong Kong and me going to FIT, I visit Manila. So I go to Manila and she presents me with a Celine handbag. And the way she gave it to me was like, oh, you know, like I just bought this thing and I don't want it anymore. You can have it. And I was like, okay, yeah, but this is a Celine tie tote that you have to buy from the store. Don't even argue with me about like secondhand or whether this thing was available anywhere else. You bought this at retail price at this store. You're telling me that you didn't want this handbag and you bought it when? I think she bought it. I don't know the real answer. So this is just to the advantage of making myself look cooler. But I'm saying she gave me like a 4,000 US dollar handbag, passing it off as like a very like whatever purchase that she made, but she gave it to me as like a graduation gift. Whether or not she went to the store with intent of purchasing it for me and finding a way to like what is this child gonna tell his mother if in case it was for the choice of her doing it out of free will and not wanting to make a huge statement about what it means to the other cousins involved. And then she went to Universe with me. She took me to Universe, which is like a beautiful store there. And then she went and got me matching like she bought me a pair of sneakers to go with the bag. So I chose like a Balenciaga to go along with the bag to send me home. And then I ended up going to New York with those two things that she got me. Then later in our future, we ended up getting really close and she treated me like a second son. She is very much a maternal figure to me because she only has one son in this life who is my cousin, and her son is adopted. But I'm saying when there is a disconnect with her having an adopted son, something like me that is her nephew isn't necessarily so far off as me as her second son. She ended up also buying me my first Louis Vuitton luggage. She bought me my first Rimowa luggage, like a Balenciaga poplin shirt. In our family, on my mother's side, in the Dealin family, we have a lot of reasons why being cousins or being aunts and uncles on our side have a lot more connotation of like a different degree of closeness. In the times that my parents could not provide for me, she was the person in my life that did the mom things that I wish my mom could do, but me not really holding any resentment towards my own mother. She is like a true God-given like Hermes lover. So like she had like a picotin lock, she had like the toolbox, she had like singular exotic handbag. So these were all things that were like things that I saw in my childhood or college life now at this point. My personal first Hermes purchases with my pocket money, I would say, was a hand soap that I got at the Manila store, at the Greenbelt store, for my Aunt Rose. The second thing I bought was an Hermes Calvi card holder from the New Jersey store, and it was in like goatskin and in a tube. That was like when I was trying to phase out of my continental life, and I had seen Race carry a few different colors of those wallets. I ended up giving it to my uncle. Most recently, the first purchases of my life were a double layered, like gray striped poplin shirt and a pair of pants of the white Izmir sandals that I use as house slippers that I bought from this city. So in my little Hermes profile, not a lot of cash, but a lot of flight to get to the locations in order to show that your itemized list of less than 10 things shows up in 3 different cities. The most important thing that I needed to reinforce with this was that my mother did not own any Hermes handbags at all. So when I am giving you a general outline of my life, I did not personally have any Hermes handbags or products in my household. Then also, I didn't really have any resentment towards, for example, if Justin or Kathy were talking to me about like Hermes handbags that they had, I wasn't really the person that would sit with myself and just be like, oh, like that's just great for you. I don't have anything myself, but in this life, I would probably want to have something in the future. Then also with my friend Race, whenever she would tell me, or when she asked me, do you know about like any Hermes handbags in your life? I was just like, like I presented myself to her as a person that was just like, like it would be nice to, but honestly for me, like I don't see them around me. So like it's just not like, like, but like I think that's really great for you. And obviously I'm really into the brand. Obviously I would love a Birkin, but what I'm saying is like, I spent my entire high school looking at these people that were close to me that still cared about me either way. Whatever came out of it doesn't matter. But what I'm saying is, I still looked at these people having these things and just having to be whole with myself, understanding that that's not the life that you have. So, in terms of what value I feel like I bring to Hermes, I would say naivety is the first big factor for me when it comes to my personal upbringing. I did explain to you how, like, oh, so you saw it in your childhood and like after high school, you saw it, and then like in between high school, you saw it too. So, like, what are you talking about? I had to realize all this about Hermes handbags in college. I would say when I was 14 and still in the US, I had found Hermes handbags on my laptop on my own, like probably through Tumblr. When I saw the Birkin for the first time in my life, honestly, in my life, it was through a screen through a laptop. So when I saw this and I was told and explained what an Hermes handbag is, I'm pretty sure the first video I saw of an Hermes handbag was on YouTube, and it was this girl that was apparently a luxury consultant, and they put like a diamond paved like rose on a black crocodile handbag for a client. And I saw it and I was like, what is this handbag? And then you look it up and you think, and you're like, oh my god, Hermes is so cool. This is a really nice handbag. So I found it when I was like back home in America, like just twiddling my thumbs and just like figuring out like what is this like aspirational life that I want to like mood board to. And I saw this Birkin and I was just like, oh my gosh, Birkins are amazing. And like, so I was just thinking to myself like, wow, this would be so cool to like be able to experience in my life. And like back then it was like 12,000 US dollars. Like this is so like, wow, it's really expensive. And like, like it seems like such a dream to be able to have one. So that was my perception of it. And I never told my mother that I cared about any of these things because it doesn't really matter. It was like a first sight for me to see on a laptop. And then I go to Hong Kong and I go to school, see my friends with other things of it, go to work and I see other things of it. And it doesn't really connect with me up until I graduate from high school and I see my first aunt, which is my Aunt Rose. And she shows up with the first Hermes handbags that I deem as identifying as a part of my family. I was just like, you have one? I've been looking at these like online and like through my friends for like the longest. And then she's just like, yeah, I mean like you hadn't seen me for like 8 years, so like what did you expect? So I was just thinking like, whoa, that's so cool. I'm paraphrasing a lot of this because I didn't really necessarily have a formal talk with my family about it. But we all had to gather the idea that when I was explaining to my Aunt Danette, I literally did not know because I was not interested in fashion till I was 14. And so at the time, I just didn't know. As in like, the way I explained it to you was that she had these things, but little me didn't know that it was in my surroundings. So whenever I would go to their house and I would visit their house, I wasn't interested in fashion yet, right? So if I did see that Hermes Kelly or Birkin, whatever she had, 1,000 times because I was in her house so often. Like what I'm saying is like I've like slept over on their futon and like I can like go up into their master's bedroom and just like chill out there, lie down there as a kid. Like I can grab stuff from their fridge and like have like Yaya make cook me food. So we had a very comfortable like family like relationship like that. I think it gets very important when you say like is the child like opening the door to your master bedroom and like actually like just like laying there on the floor and you not caring because you're not in the room and it doesn't matter because you guys are close enough to each other. Throughout that experience, I did not care. Neither did I know what handbag she was wearing when she was smoking outside the balcony of her townhouse. And then when I found out what Hermes was, I was already kind of like separated from her because I was going to high school in the city. So in childhood, when I was like in middle school, me and my cousin, who was her son is born in October 97 and I'm born in January 98. So we were like of the same litter on that side of the family. Went to middle school together, separated in high school. He went to a different high school to me. So by the time I got interested in luxury items, I was not seeing them as often. So when I heard the brand Hermes was a thing of the universe, I was not around them enough to really go back to her and look at the idea that she had one because I didn't know. Here's another example that makes it easier for you. My first luxury item purchase ever in life was a Balenciaga wallet that I bought secondhand from eBay that I had bought at my school's library on an iPad with my friend Alexa. There are two ways it could go for a child in relation to their family. And I'm already telling you my mother didn't have any of these things, but there's a comfort in understanding that the people that had these things, that's your mother's brother and their relationship is actually like that. Tanette had a Balenciaga handbag too. For me, what I'm trying to say is I bought this wallet. If I show this wallet to Tanette, she would be like, oh, did you buy this because you knew that I had a Balenciaga city bag? The first answer would have been, yes, I bought that because I saw my aunt with one. And so like, it just felt like a natural way of like feeling comfortable with myself. I might have thought that the Balenciaga wallet was a subconscious decision because when you're researching these things yourself, you came across it and was like, oh, like I like that. But then as a child with an upbringing like mine, there is a sense of bias where it's like, maybe as a child when you were running around with your Nerf guns and everything, you saw it and you're just like, whatever, like that's like my mom's shit. You're the aunties, the adult shit. And then just from like really like not conscious memory retention, you end up following suit with the things that they actually have and you don't know it. So it's a really weird like faith-based like theory that I'm trying to provide. I would say my answer is I didn't know, I didn't know, I didn't know. But then for the child that's like going through it, it's also like if you were to look at it from a bird's eye point of view, someone could infer that like, well, I mean, the child was running around these objects all the time and then ends up picking one of it. So it's kind of like there's somebody that has a smarter way of providing it. It's just like there, oh my God, the topic that I wanted it to be related to was like nature versus nurture. When I was looking through these things and researching these things, I was not the type of kid that would see something that I liked and then go ask my parents for the money to pay for it. If my mom ever had an opportunity to say something like, oh, why do you need this money? And I'm like, oh, because I want to pay for this thing. And then she's like, so what is it again? And then I'm like, oh, it's this blank and then this. And then for her to have to respond and be like, oh, did you know that so-and-so has this? Like either Tanette or Rose has this and you like, why do you want it? We did not have that conversation because I was not yearning for these luxury items so much that I ever needed to ask them. And I wouldn't say that I was scared to ask them for money because I was scared that it was too feminine or affirming of whatever they thought of me as a kid. I just found fashion in my own lane and then saw these things around me. And then when someone had to be like, Keefe, it was there for you the entire time. I don't know what was going on with you. Like, what's your problem? Because like what I'm saying is like when I presented myself to my friends, I was honestly like, gosh, like these things are amazing. Like it would be so nice to know what it's like. Come to find out, in high school, freshman year, if I had a dirty tantrum about like wanting to know what this handbag was, I could literally hit up my aunt in 5 minutes and be like, can I just go over to your house to stare at one? And she's like, yeah, sure. What I'm saying is this myth of like the affordability of an Hermes handbag to me for maybe like, let's say 4 to 5 years of my life would have been completely debunked if I had just asked somebody and for them to say like, it's not out of reach, it's not out of touch, we already have one, do you want to go see it, do you need to stare at it for a while just to say like, you know, your Tumblr pics, wow, that's amazing, here's one to show you, are you okay? The sight memory thing of a child and me having that actual naive subconscious or not idea of what style trope I wanted to develop into was something that was already present with my family, but I didn't know, and I spent my high school years not knowing. Then the way of brand awareness was innocently through seeing it online, thinking it was a completely foreign object, fully not knowing that it was something that was a stone throw away from me. And then just in general, the subconscious is a very comforting thing to you because you can have someone that was idealizing the idea of your handbags and your products for a really long time, and I still am too. I just think that for my sexual identity, there are a lot of other ways it could go, especially if my mom had the handbags in her own closet. That could affect a lot of things with my confidence towards the brand. So, for the sake of my actual organic journey through it, I feel like when I did get into the workforce and I saw these women with these handbags, Race and Dana, part of me feels like, and this is in a naturally occurring life, right? I honestly feel like God told me in a way and looked at my life plainly because God, my parents wouldn't know, uncles wouldn't know, my aunts didn't know. He just looked at everything and was like, you're probably gonna end up going into a life where you may not understand, right? I'm not trying to tell you you're wrong, but if this is the real through line, your parents do not have the capacity to explain it to a child. So let me put you in a place where if the problem was you needing to understand what Hermes handbags look like on a more professional capacity where it is wealth distributed healthily in a way that you could respect, certain products could be somebody's like car, but like you wouldn't know that because they're thing or like whatever. But to you, it's just a function of what you can afford because it's just a handbag that's $10,000. And look at that is a really ugly conversation to be having with your child. And I don't really expect a lot of parents to like want to find a way to. And I'm not going to be able to be the person that tells you how to have that conversation with your child. I'm just saying that, yeah, no, that's a really touchy subject. If I was sad about not having Hermes handbags at a certain point in my life, which I could have been, because I was jealous of seeing it on somebody else, I was immediately put in a place where a woman was like carrying a 25 centimeter Birkin and it was like, are you okay? And I'm like, now I am. And then on top of it, Race being like, so are you okay? And I'm just like, I mean, yeah, now I am. And then my friends just being like, are you okay? And I'm just like, yeah, I guess now I am. And then my Aunt Rose showing up with her little Kellys, just being like, so what was your problem again? And I'm just thinking like, the problem wasn't me like being too scared to ask anybody. It was just like, I don't fucking know. Like I saw it on a website somewhere and I thought it was so cool. Tanette being like, really? Like, no, honestly. It's the way that it was just the way that it went. I described my career path with it as prophetic because it was to me. Organically, my mom's side of the family, the Filipino side of my family, is the only side of my family that involved themselves with Hermes products. So when I think about like feeling insecure about like, do I look like the child that's just presenting themselves to a company but using like their relatives' things, and it's just a really long shot with how genuine it is about your own family's direct household's affordability. If you were to ask my mom something about like, so what was your relationship to your siblings? I think my mother would have a better answer that she might cry about, honestly. But I'm thinking like, it is so not like the other way that like other families operate in life. Is it okay for me to move through life saying that whatever my Aunt Rose gave me was kind of like what my family, my parents could have given me in case somebody was really trying to itemize the semantics of everything? I think my mother would probably have a longer discussion of like, yeah, but I could tell you examples of like when it's not okay to take your aunt or uncle's things that are like so distant from you and then like say and pass it off as your own. I don't necessarily go around saying that like a house on the peak is mine. If Hermes would like to infer with other Filipino clients of theirs, you would find a different hospitality within our culture than you would with others. She won't get upset, Keefe, but what I'm saying is Tanette's futon that I used to sleep in was when I was like 7 or 8 years old, and the townhouse that I'm speaking of, that she was like smoking out the balcony with her little Kelly bag, that was like when I was like 12 to 14. So we're talking about property move in between. So there was a this in Ernell's motion through life. Oh, also, I'm just thinking about like if I did go to high school and graduated as a senior at SI, I definitely would have been able to like leave that school, at least taking a Kelly bag to school once, because I decided to have a tantrum about being the fashion person of this school, and it would have been a thing. With Tanette, there's no, did you know that? Like, how could you ask me of that? You are just my nephew. It's like, Tanette, Tanette. You don't want to sound like me? Me and Tanette are a lot more similar than me and my own mother. And to be honest, if I can say it, because it does make me smile to think about, my mother was a little bit jealous of Tanette because my mom had a little bit more nonchalance with what she needed to affirm herself from someone like Tanette or me that is just like, oh my god, no, I am too weak-minded to be someone like you. I need to have these things because I care so much. What I like most about my Aunt Rose was the fact that she is a female breadwinner. And so I have two examples of female breadwinners in marital relationships on my mother's side. Whenever I see her shop and she's just tiaing whatever she needs to buy, it's coming out of her pocket. There's no consensual ask. I am a woman. Sign the paper, please. And it's over. If she gets lost and asks somebody to take two of the same thing, and then they need to ask, so did you want to order two of the same thing? Or did you look at them as two different colors and then you mistaken them as two different things? You were going to buy both, but then you realized it was the same thing. So were you buying two of the same thing or one of each color and then you didn't know? So how many do you want to buy now? That is the type of lifestyle that I wanted for myself. Seeing an example of it on someone I know that's like really close to me, it's really endearing, I think, for me. For sure. Because I think we can share later in the future our like beliefs and aspirations about like what really drove us to be so thirsty in this world to be affirmed by a level of success that was so heavily placed on how much we make in this world. And yeah, it is really important for me to regard her as my second mother because I personally don't feel comfortable discrediting her for what she offered me just under the pretense of her being my auntie instead of somebody that really wanted to do this for me out of the goodness of everything that she came with. With my aunt Tanette, she's a homemaker. She's the type of Hermes client that would just be like, oh, I'm not dreaming about occupation or anything. I don't have dreams of working anywhere. My occupation as a homemaker is to be able to manage a balance sheet. The other way of putting it is like whenever I would go to their house during Christmas, they had the 10-foot tall tree. She shopped at West Elm for her furniture. Her plates were like, when I think of restoration hardware, honestly, I honestly think of Tanette. And if I could say so myself, she was as close to MILF money as I could think of. Like my uncle is a Sagittarius, right? So when I think of his mindset, he was the type of guy that would want to marry the girl that, like, stop. Oh my god, if they watch it, I would honestly fuck her. I would honestly fuck her. She's amazing. You just seem like that type of guy that, like, you know, Mestiza, with the way that she talks to you, and you don't want to admit it because you're the type of guy that's like, oh, I just want something simple. I just want something simple. And this frequency that's coming out of her mouth in a more polite way. At least I have an example in my life, in my family, of a woman that I deeply aspire to want to be, or reinterpret my viewpoint on her sexuality and self-affirmed, like, confidence and everything that I can try to emulate on myself. So, Keith, what is the best way to get offered a Birkin or a Kelly in store? To be honest, I would say the most enticing way to get offered a Birkin or a Kelly at a retail level would be if you express an interest in their organizational pieces. When you do have a store that's properly stocked with a product assortment that obviously the demographic and geographical location of the store is ascertained to have. For me, the folio files and other organizational pieces are the best way to get offered a bag. The whole idea of a woman homemaker that needs or not needs the consensual ask of their husband is probably going to be, for me, somebody that I would offer to another sales associate that would rather specialize in that detail. For me, I would say that if I see you come up to me and you are looking for these folio files, an agenda cover, passport holder, when you do see a wallet or you see a pouch, let's say a pouch first, and you can put whatever, depending on the size of pouch it is. You close your tab and you look across to the other brands. You've already eaten a very large sized handbag in other vendors that are considered luxury products. So for me, if you have the balls to place that much value in a non-status showing piece of item that will have no label, has no identifiable features of the product, and you're willing to do that instead of buying another handbag to go along with the handbag that you're trying to get here, that was probably the most enticing offer for me to see, for me to want to say, well, since you're already buying all these things, let us find you that little basket that you can place all these things in. And by the end of it, I get a commission of, let's say 3 pieces runs you about like $10,000, $15,000. And then this vessel that I put all your stuff in, I don't make a commission off of, right? You didn't run out of the store with scarves. Well, it's okay. I like those little ponies because there's no more cashmere pillow talk here. There's no, let's look at some like cardigans, buy like an agenda or a wallet, and you're gonna place it in another branded handbag. Let's say the most expensive other handbag you could get was a Dior handbag. You know you don't want that Kelly wallet in a Dior handbag. You know it doesn't fit properly. If you like a monogamous relationship with your purses and accessories, are SLGs, those folio files showing that you can carry a label around, I think the best way is to have that one bag that doesn't look like anything and then just fit the contents in it with things that they won't know. You know those Kelly wallets are so long, right? If it fits like this way, I feel like you should just buy the other bag. And then I forgot, like, is it like those wallets are kind of for the people that, wait, so how do you get a Kelly wallet again in this store? Freedom of choice in what you can afford is the best way to get offered a handbag in this store. Should we give them 3 trivial 411 facts about vintage Hermes life? I feel like in the earliest times of Hermes, there was a program within the store to retain like customer satisfaction, where if you did purchase something because you wanted to play Color Me Mine with their menu and then didn't like the color, and then when the bag arrived within the time frame that allowed you to and you didn't like it, you were honestly allowed to return it to the store and just reject the item. Then that ended up becoming somebody else's handbag. When you do see like a unique special piece, it is up to the buyer of that piece to declare and be honest about whether or not that special order piece is because they ordered it and they bought it. I like the girl that says, oh, I bought like a rejected item that someone didn't want. And then there's the other girl that says, oh, I got offered this handbag, so I bought it, fully knowing that the sales associate already told her, I just got fucked over by this girl because she didn't like the colors that she chose, and I'm gonna have to figure out how to fix it. Do you want it? The coolest, like, Hermes are the Club Birkins. So for me, the ones with the like lizard racing stripes on the middle are really, really fun. I know there's this leather called Chef de Coramon doll, and they take the spine of the goat. So all of these handbags have a center marking that goes directly through the middle of each handbag. If I could show off about something, what does being an Hermes client do for me? I would like to take the path less traveled by because it wants to make a difference to me. I would say furthering manufacturing is a really important, but honestly really important, part of the reason why I want to be an Hermes client. Exotic leathers is a part of the stratosphere of fashion where I feel like I'm coming more from like Nat Geo or like Animal Planet with what I'm saying, but I infer that with reptile skins like this, it is harder for it to take to color because it's not as porous. So just in general, I know that there were certain colors they weren't really able to achieve in exotic leathers. I just have a deeper gratitude for those type of women because they knew that they were pioneering a sort of thing that veiled itself as a want to show status. It's not exactly that at all. It is imparted or indebted to them that I have the access of having what I can provide my own project with now. Color retention on exotic handbags was something that I needed to provide some sort of gratitude for. Being a first responder or first line sort of recipient of new and innovative like handbags and shapes isn't gonna feel so exclusive when I am in a circuit of people. They'll be able to have access to the same things. Now, what does your dream Hermes collection include? The Hermes hack bag is a haute écorier. I would honestly actually be able to afford these handbags into my future. To be the first of my family to take the needle upwards exponentially is a really rewarding idea to me because I would say with my mother, Anna, there was no criteria in her mind that her successor needed to necessarily be somebody that had a degree of lived experience with the luxury items that she advocates for. So I think for me, being able to be presented to the brand by her and myself, well, first of all, I earned it myself in terms of like me having a career with the network. But the second response would be, at least when I showed up to the office and like I have to be introduced as a new person, you're not coming from somebody that like, if this brand allows me to land something of a product that I cannot argue and it's indefensible for me to ever say whether it could be offered to somebody in store, the potential for me to have been able to be a client over the course of his life. If you want to make like $100,000 off of scarves, that's fine. What you're going to do is you're probably going to lose a lot of money investing in me. And what you get in return is one of the most intangible pieces of value that you could have for a brand because of what my family means for the context of Asians in a Western ideal. I'm a 26-year-old man and I'm a child. I just hope the brand does look at my work as a photographer, as a stylist, as a social personality to the demographics of people that I have truly attracted outside of this city. I just hope that all those things matter more than what value I've provided in the past 5 years, because to me, being like a teleserie sitcom Doraemon is not as rewarding as being a fine art photographer that has built a life of being a good person. Being able to say I'm well educated, my family this, my family that those things are much easier for someone to disregard and say, oh, like that's not my fault because like my life didn't afford me that. Were you a good person in this life? Like, were you a good person in this life? Were you a good person where you were able to access all the things you honestly desired out of platonic relationships and not need to build some sort of defense mechanism against the things you weren't capable of? I think for the way that I look you get a good balance of a lot of those things. The second bag I would say is a Kelly 28 centimeter. I grew up in this life feeling like I would have to carry a Birkin 35 in order for it to be proportionally right for me. And now that I am 26 looking the way that I do, I really hope that when I do wear a Kelly, that I'm not hard selling myself as a Kelly person because I want to be able to carry that bag so badly for my process as a human being. A retail sales associate, like in New York or something, telling me, no, yeah, like I would want a Kelly for you too over a Birkin. And then the other three items that I was going to say that were really important Hermes products for me to have are a 24, 24, 21 bag, which is like a new bag that I thought was like a really cool, like interesting bag that if I had to show that I was interested in something outside of like the two main ones, that was the one that felt like naturally gravitated towards me the most. I would say a vintage Kelly watch is obviously something that I would really want to have because it takes me back to a really good place in my life. The second thing, or the third thing, I mean, is an atoll pouch. Because when I was talking about this whole folio file thing, I always looked at those atoll pouches as it's not true, it's not true. And if it was true, so many other people would be working here. I looked at those atoll pouches as like what a sales associate gets when they just close out on like a exotic handbag order. So like if like basically like if you were a sales associate and like you were able to snaggle some girl into buying like let's say like a any size, but I'm saying like an exotic handbag, I thought that the company would send you an atoll pouch that looks like this to include like your own copy of like its like first CITES, its first like acknowledgement of like your consent form going up, and then just like all the things that you could fit in memorabilia. So I thought like it's not real, but I'm saying like the best like Hermes sales associate that can like sell those like exotic handbags because they've built a good reputation with the brand in terms of what type of quality of clients they can actually garner for it. I felt like in their home they would have those atoll pouches like stacked like crazy to just show like the history of Keep, the way that you pronounce that, the way that they've been able to create a career for themselves. So those atoll pouches just seem really cool.